The hall went silent the moment Marjorie Taylor Greene strode onto the stage. It wasn't just quiet, it was the kind of silence that presses on your chest, where every heartbeat feels louder than the last. Spotlights cut through the darkness, painting her in sharp angles, every smirk radiating arrogance and defiance. As she leaned into the microphone and unleashed a line so biting that gasps echoed across the room. Some audience members froze, some instinctively covered their mouths, and others leaned forward, unable to look away. It was humiliation crafted as art, precise and unrelenting. Across the stage, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stood still, calm, composed, her presence pulling the tension into a taut wire. Her eyes didn't just watch, they calculated, prepared, and held the storm behind their quiet gaze. Every person in the hall felt it. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was a battle of wills. In the middle, Nancy Pelosi shifted slightly, trying to anchor the room. But even her authority seemed secondary to the electric tension crackling in the air. Cameras flashed, whispers rippled, hearts raced. Every second stretched longer than the last. And then it happened. AOC's lips barely moved, yet the power in her gaze was undeniable. The room leaned in instinctively, sensing that what came next would shatter expectations, flip the energy of the hall, and leave everyone breathless. As the suspense peaked, she finally spoke, each word measured, piercing the silence. Greater than true strength isn't shown in noise and mockery or in the power you claim. It's shown in what you do when no one is applauding. A hush fell. Even Marjorie's smirk faltered for a moment. The hall wasn't just watching, it was waiting for the storm that was about to break. Cliffhanger. In that heartbeat, everyone knew one thing. What happened next would rewrite everything they thought. They knew about power, courage, and truth. The tension in the hall wasn't just about a single insult, it was about everything that followed it. Marjorie Taylor Greene had unleashed her words with a calculated cruelty. But this night was bigger than any punchline. It was a symbolic battlefield, a confrontation between divisions of leadership. Marjorie thrived on chaos. Loud, mocking, divisive, her energy was like a storm tearing through calm waters. Every joke, every jab was designed to dominate, to make her opponents shrink. Her supporters cheered, energized by her audacity, convinced of her supremacy. Across the stage, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez embodied the opposite. Calm, measured, speaking to people's hopes, dreams, and dignity. She wasn't here for applause or headlines. She was here for truth, integrity, and resilience. Every glance she cast, every micro-expression, radiated quiet strength. Nancy Pelosi, positioned between them, tried to guide the room. Her presence a reminder that order still mattered. But even she could feel the stakes soaring higher with each passing second. The energy in the hall wasn't just suspense, it was history in motion. Outside the stage, the ripple effect was already beginning. Immigrant families huddled in living rooms, children and young adults glued to screens, hearts beating in sync with every word. Each insult felt personal, as if their own struggles were being mocked. They waited, breath held, for AOC's response, hoping, believing that dignity could triumph over cruelty. Marjorie's smirk widened, unaware that the crowd's anticipation had shifted subtly. What she thought was her power, her loud, sharp words, was being measured against something deeper. Something she couldn't see yet: experience, empathy, an unwavering principle. The halls seemed to shrink under the weight of what was about to happen. Cameras snapped frantically, reporters scribbled furiously, and even longtime observers whispered to each other, this could be a turning point. Then, a subtle change. AOC shifted slightly, a quiet signal of focus, and the room instinctively leaned closer. Everyone knew that the first response would set the tone for the night. The stakes weren't just political, they were moral. Every viewer at home, every person in that hall, felt the unspoken tension. This was more than words. This was a test of character. And in that charged silence, the past hovered like a shadow. Unknown to Marjorie, this insult had triggered a memory, a moment she had fought to bury. A fragment of her own history that might unravel her composure. Only one person could bring it back to the surface, and the audience sensed it even before it unfolded. Cliffhanger. The hall held its collective breath, waiting for the response that would change everything. A response that could not only silence the insult but turn it into a lesson in courage, strength, and unshakable dignity. Marjorie Taylor Greene's rise wasn't accidental. Behind the smirk and the sharp jokes lay a hunger relentless, almost desperate craving to be heard, to dominate every room, every stage, every headline. From her earliest days in politics, she had learned that volume often masquerades as power. The louder she was, the more visible she became. The sharper her words, the more attention she commanded. She had built an empire of influence carefully, yet chaotically. Every insult she delivered, every dramatic gesture, was calculated to leave her opponents off balance. She thrived on spectacle, on the reaction she could force from others. But there was a contradiction woven into her bravado, a quiet insecurity she rarely admitted, even to herself. Beneath the fierce exterior, she feared being irrelevant, unheard, or forgotten. Her path was marked by moments of triumph, sure, but also shadows she tried to bury. Political missteps, alliances that faltered, whispers of ambition that sometimes crossed the line into obsession. Marjorie's story was not just one of power, but of a woman wrestling with the very insecurities her persona tried to hide. And yet, for all her bluster, she was cunning. She knew how to command a room. She knew how to twist a phrase, how to provoke, how to push buttons without appearing weak. Every move on the stage that night was not just performance, it was a lifetime of strategy, honed into seconds of impact. But every empire has its cracks. Even as she strutted across the stage, she carried with her a memory she had long fought to forget, a moment of vulnerability, when her own courage had once faltered, when her choices had consequences she hadn't fully anticipated. It was a ghost she thought she had buried, but that night, it hovered closer than ever. Marjorie's arrogance made her dangerous, but the audience could sense the tension beneath it, a storm waiting to erupt, a flaw that could be exploited by someone who understood patience, integrity, and quiet power. And across the hall, AOC's gaze was steady, unflinching, and aware. She didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to match the spectacle. She only needed to wait. Because history has a way of returning to the moments you try hardest to forget. And for Marjorie, that night, that insult, had done exactly that. It had unknowingly summoned the one force, capable of reminding her of who she had once been, and who she could never escape becoming. Cliffhanger. And that forgotten memory, the one Marjorie had buried deep, was about to resurface, carried forward by the one person she had underestimated the most. The audience, unknowingly, was about to witness a reckoning that would shift the balance of power on that stage forever.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez didn't grow up on stages or in gilded halls. She was raised in a modest immigrant household in New York, where every day was a lesson in perseverance and dignity. Her parents worked tirelessly, long shifts, multiple jobs, just to keep the family afloat, just to give their children a chance at something better. From an early age, AOC watched sacrifice unfold in real time, and it shaped the very foundation of who she would become. School wasn't easy. She often saw classmates judged for their backgrounds, their accents, their families. But she learned quickly, strength wasn't in shouting over others. It was in standing tall when the world expected you to shrink. Every challenge she faced, every slight, every underestimation, was a brick in the wall of resilience she was quietly building. As she entered politics, the lessons of her upbringing never left her. She saw how the loudest, most aggressive voices often overshadowed substance, but she also understood that change required patience, strategy, and unwavering principle. Every debate, every town hall, every confrontation was another opportunity to demonstrate that leadership could be measured in empathy and integrity, not in volume or spectacle. Her rise wasn't meteoric by chance. It was deliberate, forged through late nights of policy study, community organizing, and listening to voices often ignored. She became a symbol for those who felt invisible, a beacon for young people, immigrants, and anyone who had ever been told their dreams were too big. But what made her truly formidable wasn't just knowledge or preparation, it was restraint under pressure. She had seen the chaos that arrogance could unleash, and she knew the power of responding with calm strength. Where others might match cruelty with cruelty, she chose to reflect principle and clarity. That choice alone set her apart, marking her as someone whose courage was measured not in noise, but in impact. Behind the calm exterior, there was fire. Every injustice she witnessed, every mockery hurled at her or her community, fueled a determination to stand up, not for ego, but for what was right. It was a quiet kind of bravery, one that waited patiently, observing the storm, knowing the moment would come to act decisively, and tonight, that moment had arrived. She wasn't just responding to Marjorie Taylor Greene's insult. She was stepping onto a stage shaped by the struggles of her past, the lessons of her family, and the hopes of countless Americans who saw themselves in her resolve. Every eye in the hall, every camera in the country, and every viewer at home was about to witness the culmination of years of preparation and purpose. Cliffhanger. And this was the strength she brought to the stage. Quiet, measured, and almost invisible, until the exact moment it would erupt. The audience didn't yet realize it, but history was about to witness a moment where dignity and truth would confront arrogance, and the outcome would leave a lasting imprint on everyone present. The stage seemed to shrink under the weight of anticipation. Marjorie Taylor Greene's voice rose again, sharper this time, dripping with mockery. Each word was a deliberate strike, aimed not just at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but at the very idea of restraint, principle, and empathy. The crowd flinched collectively, caught between shock, fascination, and unease. Her supporters cheered, fueled by the spectacle. She thrived on the reaction, letting the chaos she created amplify her presence. Every jab, every sneer was measured to provoke, to dominate, to humiliate. She moved across the stage with exaggerated gestures, as if daring anyone to challenge her. But across the stage, AOC remained unmoved. She didn't blink, flinch, or raise her voice. Her posture was steady, her eyes locked, her breathing controlled. She was a rock in the storm, a calm that made the chaos around her feel even louder. The audience began to sense that her silence was not hesitation, it was preparation, a gathering of power waiting to be released. Nancy Pelosi watched from her seat, knowing that this escalation was more than theatrics. The tension was a pressure cooker, and only a single move would determine who controlled the narrative, who commanded respect, and who would falter. Cameras clicked frantically, capturing every reaction, every subtle change in expression. The room seemed to pulse with the collective heartbeat of everyone present. Marjorie noticed the calm in AOC's gaze, and for a split second, her confidence faltered. She quickly masked it with a laugh, pretending the stage was entirely under her control, but a bead of sweat betrayed the effort. She doubled down, her insults sharper, her voice louder, as if sheer volume could overwhelm dignity itself. Every word was now a test of patience, of courage, and of character. The audience sensed it. Students at home leaned closer to screens, families watched with hearts racing, and the room felt like it was teetering on the edge of something monumental. Every insult Marjorie hurled, every sneer she cast, was meeting an unyielding wall of composure. And then, just as the tension reached a fever pitch, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez took a subtle step forward. It was a simple movement, almost imperceptible, yet it sent a shock wave through the room. Cameras zoomed, whispers spread, and a hush fell over the hall. In that heartbeat, everyone knew. The storm wasn't coming from the loudest voice. It was about to erupt from the calmest one. Cliffhanger. And as AOC moved, the air seemed to shift. The energy of the entire hall changed in an instant. Then, with a quiet determination, she prepared to speak, and the room collectively held its breath. The oxygen seemed to vanish, waiting for the moment that would turn the entire confrontation upside down. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stepped forward, but she didn't shout. She didn't raise her voice to match Marjorie's chaos. Instead, she let the room settle, the cameras focusing, the audience leaning in, knowing something monumental was about to unfold. Her words began softly, almost a whisper, but they carried the weight of years of struggle, of every overlooked voice, of every injustice that had shaped her journey. She told a story, one the audience would never forget. It was a winter night years ago, she began, her voice calm yet commanding. A child cried in the shadows of a collapsed shelter. No one was there to notice. No one was there to help. Except one person. She paused, letting the tension build. Every eye in the room fixed on her. "That person was her younger self," she said, subtly nodding toward Marjorie. "Braver than she admitted, kinder than she allowed the world to see." The hall was silent. Even Marjorie's smirk wavered. The narrative was no longer just about politics. It was about humanity, courage, and forgotten truths. AOC painted the memory with vivid detail. The storm, the fear, the act of bravery that had once defined Marjorie. Every listener felt the weight of it. The audience shifted from shock to empathy to awe. "You see," AOC continued, "strength isn't in shouting, mocking, or tearing others down. Strength is in what you do when no one is watching. And deep down, every person has that capacity for courage, even when they've lost sight of it." Marjorie's posture stiffened. Her arrogance, so carefully constructed, began to crack. The crowd sensed it. Whispers ran through the hall. Supporters exchanged uneasy glances. The narrative was flipping before their eyes. The villain was being reminded of a humanity she had tried to bury, and the hero's calm power was reshaping the room. Then came the final blow. Not cruel, not vengeful, but piercingly true. AOC looked directly at Marjorie and said, "You were a better person once. I don't want to see who you've become. I want you to find her again." A pause. Silence. The words hung in the air like a storm frozen mid-strike. The crowd didn't breathe. Cameras captured every micro-expression. Marjorie's eyes widened, her smirk faltered, and for the first time, she felt the weight of her actions reflected back at her. The hall erupted, not in mockery, not in applause for aggression, but in respect, awe, and a stunned acknowledgement of true courage and dignity. The energy shifted. What had started as a humiliating confrontation transformed into a powerful lesson about humanity, empathy, and leadership. Even Nancy Pelosi felt the shift. Her composed presence now radiated relief and validation, knowing that the battle had been won not with volume or theatrics, but with principle and truth. And yet, the impact didn't end in that room. Cameras had captured every word, every pause, every subtle glance. Clips began circulating instantly, people watching at home, immigrant families, students, young activists, all felt seen, validated, and inspired. The story wasn't just unfolding on stage, it was rippling across communities, leaving a wake of reflection and pride. Cliffhanger/tease. But the aftershocks weren't confined to applause and viral moments. The confrontation had planted seeds of self-reflection, of change, and of a reckoning that would continue far beyond the stage. The audience knew one thing. The night had not ended, and the story was far from over.
The hall emptied slowly, but the energy didn't fade. It lingered like a charged storm, leaving everyone who had witnessed it in a state of awe. Students replayed clips on their phones, sharing every word of AOC's story with friends. Families, especially immigrant households, sat quietly, hearts welling with pride and recognition. They had seen their struggles reflected on that stage, their dignity defended in ways they never imagined possible. Astor's social circles buzzed with conversation. Young activists called AOC the calm lion, a symbol of courage and patience, the embodiment of strength under pressure. Communities across the city schools, local organizations, even workplaces discussed the power of restraint over aggression, empathy over mockery. The night became more than a debate. It became a lesson, a touchstone, a story people would recount for years. Asterisk meanwhile. Behind the scenes, Marjorie Taylor Greene faced the fallout she hadn't anticipated. Her advisors whispered anxiously, scanning the room, trying to salvage control. Supporters who had cheered moments before now exchanged uneasy glances, uncertain if their allegiance could withstand the narrative shift. Even Marjorie herself found quiet moments of doubt creeping in, reflections she hadn't allowed herself in years. The memory AOC had summoned, the one she had buried, now gnawed at her, leaving cracks in her armor of arrogance. Nancy Pelosi, ever the mediator, watched the shifting dynamics with careful satisfaction. She knew that the confrontation had done more than entertain. It had reshaped the perception of leadership for an entire generation. It had proven that integrity, patience, and dignity could overcome the loudest, harshest attacks. Asterisk beyond the hall, the world reacted. Analysts, commentators, and public figures debated the encounter endlessly. Some dissected the strategy, others celebrated the morality of the response. But all agreed on one thing. The moment had changed the narrative. Clips went viral across networks, with hashtags and phrases like calm over chaos trending in discussions everywhere. People connected emotionally, feeling empowered and inspired by the demonstration of measured courage. Asterisk, and yet, the ripple effect extended even further. Young leaders felt emboldened, citizens felt represented, and the story began to shape conversations about character, empathy, and accountability. The confrontation had transcended politics. It had become a cultural touchstone, a reminder that how you respond under pressure defines your legacy, far more than how loudly you shout. Asterisk, but the real impact wasn't over yet. Even as applause faded and cameras shut off, AOC returned to the mic one last time. Every eye turned toward her, knowing that her final words could seal the night's lesson or send a new shockwave through everyone watching. Asterisk. The hall had quieted, but a new energy lingered, a pulse of reflection, pride, and hope. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stepped back to the mic, her posture calm, her gaze sweeping across the audience. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Every eye was on her, every mind open to the message she was about to deliver. Asterisk, tonight, she began. Her words deliberate, measured, yet infused with power. We've seen what leadership can look like. Not in arrogance, not in cruelty, not in the loudest voice in the room, but in dignity, patience, and truth. Asterisk, the audience absorbed every syllable. Families, young people, and students felt a sense of validation. They were seen, heard, and represented. The message resonated far beyond the stage. It reached into living rooms, schools, and workplaces, reminding everyone that strength is measured by how you uphold integrity, even when provoked. Asterisk, strength, she continued, is not about defeating others with mockery or insults. It's about standing tall for what is right, defending the vulnerable, and choosing empathy over vengeance. Every challenge we face, every attack we endure, is an opportunity to rise above, to prove that character matters more than chaos. Asterisk, her voice carried warmth and conviction. She framed leadership not as domination, but as responsibility and service. A call to act with moral courage even when the world seems intent on tearing you down. The audience felt inspired, uplifted, and motivated. Asterisk, Marjorie Taylor Greene's smirk had long vanished. Even the loudest voices, the most confident disruptors, could not overshadow the quiet force of truth and dignity. AOC had reframed the entire confrontation into a universal lesson. Leadership is about who you are when no one is cheering, not who can shout the loudest. Asterisk, and so, AOC concluded, let this night remind us all, whether immigrant, student, worker, or dreamer, that resilience, empathy, and dignity will always outlast cruelty, arrogance, and mockery. Stand tall, speak truth, lift others as you climb. That is the essence of real leadership. Asterisk, the hall erupted not in noise, but in understanding. Nods of affirmation and silent admiration. People felt the weight of the lesson sink in, a story that would stay with them, guide them, and inspire them long after the lights dimmed. Asterisk, quotation for emotional impact. Asterisk, true courage is not in raising your voice, but in holding your ground when the world expects you to fall. Asterisk, the message was clear. The confrontation had been more than a clash of personalities. It was a test of principles, character, and humanity. And in that moment, everyone present, every viewer at home, understood dignity always triumphs over humiliation, empathy over arrogance, and integrity over spectacle. Asterisk, the lesson had landed. But the story would echo far beyond that night. Every conversation, every memory of this encounter, would carry the reminder of what leadership truly meant: quiet, principled, and unstoppable. Asterisk, as the lights dimmed and the applause settled into a quiet hum, the lesson of the night lingered stronger, sharper, unforgettable. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had transformed a confrontation into a masterclass of dignity and leadership. The story wasn't just about the clash of personalities. It was about values, courage, and the power of calm strength in the face of arrogance. Asterisk, remember. AOC's voice echoed in memory. True leadership isn't measured by who yells the loudest, but by who stands tall when it matters most. That simple truth resonated far beyond the stage, across cities, classrooms, and homes. It reminded viewers that no matter the odds, integrity and empathy can outshine mockery and chaos. Asterisk, for those watching, this wasn't just a story to witness, it was a call to embody, to rise above insults, to defend the vulnerable, to hold ground with dignity, and to inspire others by example. Every immigrant, student, or dreamer could see themselves in this moment, reminded that courage isn't always loud, but it is always powerful. Asterisk, if this story moved you, remember to carry its lesson into your own life. Stand tall when challenged, speak truth when it matters, and never let arrogance dictate your worth. Share this story, inspire your community, and let others know that dignity always wins over humiliation. Asterisk, greater than courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act with integrity despite it. Asterisk, now. Step forward in your own life as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did on that stage, calm, composed, and unstoppable. The story ends here, but its impact is only beginning. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk.